Hi, everybody. We are back. I'm Tyler Stalman, and I've got with me Cameron Whitman once again.
Hello, hello.
And today we wanted to have a conversation about lenses, a kind of unguided, directionless conversation, but based on the idea of building out a kit and when it is right to go in the direction of a zoom versus a prime lens. Prime lens, if you don't know, is like a fixed focal length. And I know I was saying when we do these shows, we should, like, I don't want to do it at a kind of entry level, but in case anybody's watching who isn't super familiar with how lenses work, I guess let's start off with, like, what are the really basic, not even advantages, but features, let's just say features of zooms versus primes. You mean you start?
Well, I think that one of the most obvious ones is probably the vibration reduction or image stabilization.
Oh, is that the most obvious? I wasn't even...
I would think so, because
Is
I
that
mean,
what
to
directs
me,
you a lot of the time?
no. Actually, I typically think of them as being kind of like novelty things, that I don't really personally see much use in. Having said that, I will say that it is quite convenient on a 70 to 200
Well, yeah,
pro lens.
which lenses have you seen it in the most? Like, because I'm Canon, you're Nikon, so we probably are familiar with completely different lenses for the most part. But
Yeah, it's interesting though, because like for the pro zooms, for Nikon, you have the 24 to 70, or you have the 24 to 120. The 24 to 70 is actually like a higher grade lens, and it has less distortion, and it's sharper throughout the entire range, and it doesn't have the vibration reduction. Then the 24 to 120 is the prosumer, I guess, version, and it does have the vibration reduction. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, it kind of feels like, like it's trying to make up for, the lack of speed, because the 24 to 120 is a constant 4, whereas the other is a 2.8.
yeah, so it's pretty close to the Canon lineup, which is a 24 to 105 is the other. And yeah, you're right that they kind of market it as a bit more prosumer. They're both in the L line for Canon, so they're both considered pro lenses. I find them both to be very sharp. I'm not sure that I'd call the 24 to 105 any lesser quality, but the f4 is a whole lot slower.
Yeah, and
I don't bring it out. I don't bring it out for events or.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like shooting at f4 means that like I'm going for maximum sharpness most of the time, because I'm shooting on really fast lenses, where that's actually a pretty sweet spot. But on a zoom lens, I find that f4 is not really all that attractive wide open. And then you have to really stop it down. Like you have to stop it down to like f8 if you're going for maximum sharpness, or f11 even, I guess.
Right. Well, and that's why for me it ends up being the studio strobe lens that we'll use it, usually around f8, I'd say. But that leads to what I think of pretty quickly with the zoom and prime comparison, is that the prime lenses often are much faster.
Yeah.
For some science-y optics reason, it's a lot easier to there's less moving parts, it's simpler mechanically, and you can pack more aperture into a lens that is only one focal length.
And sharpness.
And sharpness. Generally. Although, you know what? When I was making my decisions, I think I overestimated the sharpness factor. I think that I found that the pro zoom lenses were pretty close, and that a lot of the fixed focal length Canons anyway, I was expecting them to be perfect all the time. And it's not really the case. Like I always had this idea that a 50 millimeter fixed lens is, and especially the most expensive, so let's say on Canon, that's the 1.2, that's got to be the sharpest lens that exists. Right? It's like a default lens at like a medium range, and so if you shoot that at f8, it's got to be the sharpest thing ever. And it is quite sharp, but it's not blow your mind sharp. It's not. Right. I mean, compared to the 70 to 200, it's not. I find the 200 to be as sharp as anything else.
Same with the Nikon version. It's even at 2.8, it's just perfect every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever stop it down for sharpness? I find like
I never have to.
Yeah. No, I would stop it down to get more depth of field, but not to.
Yep. And I mean, okay, I think you just really opened the door to what it's really all about, is that, you know, when you're picking a high quality lens versus just a versatile lens, it really just, you know, for me, what it needs to be is sharp at every depth.
Right.
You know, like, so that's one of the reasons why I prefer the Sigma art lenses to the just Nikon equivalents, is because all the way open at 1.4, these lenses are still super sharp.
Yeah.
Where with the Nikon equivalents, it's you know, it's kind of like a roll of the dice. Like 1 out of every 5 might be really tack sharp.
1 out of 5, you're lucky.
Yeah, you know, and that's just it, right? Is that like sometimes you're surprised by how good they come out, and most of the time you're disappointed. You know, so and that's not really a good enough average for me.
Well, it's maybe not. Let's hold off on the Sigma thing. I feel like we could talk about Sigmas a lot, and let's do that in a few minutes. But
okay.
So still just in the comparison, if we hold to that, would the sharpness alone be enough for you to like recommend or choose? Like at this point, do you choose between those lenses just based on sharpness? I find that the lineup that we own is now at the point that the zooms are all sharp enough that it's not we don't have to choose based on that. Whereas if you have some cheaper lenses, you may be making your decisions a lot more based on the on like if you have the kit zoom lens, then moving to a prime from that is a much bigger step, I think.
Yeah. You know, I don't know that sharpness is anymore like the key factor for me. Like I think that it was, you know, at some point, and I think that that's kind of like, but how do you, you know, that should, like, you know, it's normal for people, you know, like the first thing that you think is like, how sharp is this lens?
Yeah. And at 100%.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that when you're shooting a lot of portraits, sometimes sharpness isn't really all that much of a great thing. Yeah. You know, it really just depends on whose portrait you're taking and what effect you're going for.
Well, or if you go back to film for a little while, all of a sudden you might care a lot less about sharpness.
Totally. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point, because I find that I shoot a lot of fast primes on film and they're not sharp at all.
No, the same like the Sigma that is extremely sharp on digital never looks tack sharp in film.
Yeah.
I'm usually shooting, I shoot 435 a lot of the time. So I'm sure it's a different story at 120, but I don't really shoot medium format. So
yeah. No, I find that to be the case. I actually, whenever I have this conversation with people about the differences between film and digital, like I actually think of 35 as being kind of like more of a lo-fi thing, you know, compared to digital. So that's what I like about it, is that it's not.
It tracks me to it as well.
Yeah, because it's gritty, it's a little bit dirty, and like depending on the subject, like I think it just suits it better, and it's got you know, let's go back to our other conversation, but this goes, you know, it offers up a unique color quality that you can't really replicate very easily.
Yeah, and
but I think that medium format, like 120, actually looks a lot like what we're used to out of these high resolution digital cameras.
Well, or better.
Yeah,
because you've got the larger focal field as well. You've got that that extra nice depth of field that you get.
Yeah, which is, you know, that's my favorite part about shooting medium format. It's just like, you know, if you shoot wide open on a medium format versus a 35 millimeter film camera, there's this crazy.
Yeah.
The amount of depth and sharpness. So yeah. Anyway. Different conversation.
Yeah. Obviously, the other thing that you get with the zoom lens is the versatility. So we've kind of talked about the advantages of prime, that they can shoot in lower light. You can get a shallower depth of field look, and they can be sharper under certain circumstances. But the zooms, you can get a lot further with just one lens, right? You're not trapped into one focal length, or running back and forth, or feeling like you really regret your lens decision, which can happen when you're shooting a prime.
Well, and if you have too many lenses, it happens a lot, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where
Totally.
you're like, oh man, I wish I had brought that, but you know, your bag is too heavy. So
Well, I find I've been more and more trying to just bring one lens if I can. I try to get away with like one or two lenses all day if it's possible.
yeah, like that's how you're gonna see it that day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's actually a really strong exercise that,
Yeah.
you know, for people who are, you know, maybe trying to get past the amateur phase and maybe advanced phases. Like, I usually try to recommend people just picking out a focal length and going with it.
Right. And get really comfortable with it, understand what it means, and be able to predict it before you take the photo. Like we were talking, or I was saying last time, the shooting, when you're watching a movie, I like to play that game of guessing what focal length we're looking at. And you can, that only comes from shooting, I think, prime lenses. You wouldn't get that if you only shot zoom lenses, because generally you don't look at what you just used. You have no idea what focal length you just shot.
That's right.
Unless you're all the way in or all the way out.
Yeah, I mean, you abuse that luxury so heavily because you're constantly just, you know, going in and out, and you're not really conscious of what the effects are at this length or that length.
The bad habit that it can build, especially if you're just starting out, is not moving or changing the focal length intentionally, right? So you're like, well, I'm already standing here and I need to get closer to that thing across the room, so I'm just going to twist this. And I'm there, right? You don't think about like, well, what if I just take a few steps forward? What's the effect?
Right. What's the lens effect that's going to take place, and how is that either going to be pleasing?
And
you know,
I think it can take a long time for a new photographer to stop. Just from conversations, to stop thinking that that's just bullshit. That it's like that, you know, I had that feeling for a while. That's like, oh, you know, 85 is better than 35 for a portrait, for a headshot. It's like, why? I have a 35 right here. You're telling me I can't take a nice portrait with this? But, you know, after a while, you're like, oh, you have to actually really use it for a while to start understanding what that difference means, what compression does, or what a distortion does, or not even distortion. Like, there's just the feeling of as you come in with a wide lens close to a face, that the feeling of presence. Like, you know, the viewer knows, even if they know nothing about photography, they know that the photographer and the subject have just gotten a lot closer together. Which a good example of it is in Amelie. Forget the director's name, but I was watching the Alien series the other day and noticing that in Alien Resurrection, it actually has very similar camera work to Amelie. And I don't know if you've seen either of those movies.
Yeah, I've seen them both.
Yeah, but it's like, it's all very wide, and like you'll pull in really close for close-ups, and it's a really distinct feeling. You're really like it's the feeling of pressing against the person's face.
Oh, you know what? Another couple series I can think of from HBO is 6 Feet Under was a lot like that.
Oh,
you know, they used. Well, you know, it's a similar thing. They'd use wide lenses and like, and I think that in some cases I felt like they were maybe using tilt shift lenses, because there would be, you know, it'd be a wide view, and there'd be like, it'd move right up to the person's face for dramatic effect, but then all of a sudden, you know, you'd see way in the distance this other person, and that other person was also sharp, but everything in between was blur. And it was just these two people interacting from a distance. And it was this really awesome camera work. And actually, Boardwalk Empire did that too.
Okay, I also watch. I don't watch enough TV. I mostly watch movies. So.
Yeah, well, I think that
The Social Network has some nice tilt shift work though.
yeah, that's right. And that's the fun thing about watching these high budget shows on TV is that, you can actually see a lot of the same tricks that they're doing in movies.
Yeah. You know,
Whereas I think a network, you don't really see that nearly as much.
I think to get some great information about prime lenses, a awesome thing to watch is the behind the scenes to the Social Network. Like the thing on the DVD really, I mean, I don't know why this movie stuck with me so much. Like I watched it and I didn't really care, but it's just visually so great. Like I think just David Fincher I've been kind of obsessed with lately, and he so everything was shot all the way open. The whole series is all on prime lenses, shot at 1.3, I believe. It's the master primes. So like the focus pulling is intense. Like you still have characters moving the way they always do, and you're tracking them. And but it makes for a really distinct effect. And if you watch the behind the scenes and rewatch that movie, there's a lot you start seeing in lens use. It's a great example of like understanding prime lenses, I think.
How hard is that to focus pull? Like, I'm just trying to think about it. And it seems like, like like a marathon.
Oh yeah,
it's that hard.
Well, yeah. Think about we were just saying, you're lucky if you get 1 in 5 shots in focus.
Yeah.
But if you're shooting a movie, you have to just keep getting in focus constantly as the person moves.
It's mystifying.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna talk more about that decision-making thing. That the best argument if you're starting to use primes is definitely the education, the forcing you to make a conscious decision for every photo that you take. Yeah. And that later on, when you maybe have access to whatever tool you need for that shoot, the decision-making process can become a little different and your priorities can shift.
Sure thing. It's interesting because like that made me remember, like, okay, so like people ask all the time, you've got to experience this as well. So anytime you're a pro shooter, everybody that comes to you and says like, hey, I need advice, I'm going to buy a camera.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah.
Question.
Yeah, it's like every day, right? So
yeah.
I get this a lot, and so usually the first reply I'm going to give is just, well, what do you want to shoot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most people don't start off saying, well, I want to shoot weddings and I want to shoot events or something, so like whenever like I get people's initial ideas about what they're after, I'm surprised that they even want to zoom. And I'm like, well, why do you want to zoom? Well, I just want the options. It's like, well, why? I mean, what do you...
everybody imagines this scenario where like, I'm going to be in Paris and I'll be on a bridge, and on the other bridge across the river, there'll be the perfect couple kissing, and I'm going to need to zoom in a mile to get the perfect shot, and then I'll have my best image ever. And like, just... you don't really like, that's why like travel zooms are a category for compact cameras, but yeah, I just find that doesn't happen. I went on a 3-month trip at one point and I only brought a 50 millimeter. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I did. And I feel like I could do that again, because it wasn't the trip wasn't about photography. But yeah, it really gets you comfortable with it when you just don't have anything else with you. When you don't even think about switching. You just think about, how can I compose this shot better with what I have? Yeah.
And I think that, people are actually more primed for that than they realize, because, most people that don't have like a DSLR or, like a mirrorless or something like that, they're used to shooting with their phone, right? So they're used to shooting at whatever, like, what is that, 28 35 millimeter equivalent? That's what they're used to shooting everything at. And so like that's actually exactly what I recommend to people, is that like, if you're just starting out with a DSLR, like explore what it really feels like to shoot with it, and get a 35 millimeter.
Yeah the only thing really separating an iPhone camera, which there's so much to say about that, like speaking of prime lenses, talking about phones, But the only thing that really holds you back, I think, is that it is so wide, which offers a lot of great options. It is the right decision. That's what should be on phones. But imagine if it was a 50 mil equivalent. That'd be interesting, right? I mean, all of a sudden you'd be shooting people in a lot kind of nicer ways. It'd affect the depth of field. It would it'd be really different. But just this one decision by, I don't know, Apple and Samsung has a massive effect on what all of the photography that we see every single day, what it is. And it's all, in the range of between like 25 and 30 millimeters.
Yeah.
And we've just kind of gotten used to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's become quite, I mean, that's the way that we see though, normally, right? And that's why they call those normal, well, 28's a little bit wide, but between 35 and 50 is the normal length.
Yeah, I've read some really heated arguments about what the true normal is. And yeah, I mean, to me, like 40 maybe. Just split the difference.
Well, yeah, because I mean, when you're looking through a lens, you don't have peripheral vision, so that usually is what messes people up when they're considering that. But what it is it's a focal length. It's how you render.
Right.
I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know like the lens science, but
I know. Do you ever feel like you will learn it someday? I mean, I've tried. I was trying to explain aperture the other day, and I just stopped myself before giving the real explanation. I know it's something to do with the like ratio of the diameter of the lens to the sensor. It's somewhere in there. But I don't actually understand it. And I don't know. I feel like it would probably be a good thing to know, right? Would I take better photos?
No. No.
I thought that could be my solution.
I mean, I think that works for some people, but I think that the honest truth is that like there's plenty of people that have no idea what they're using, and it's just a matter of like, having a cause to use it.
See, I always feel like cinematographers and filmmakers are more likely to know the real answer than a photographer.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
Yeah, and I'll probably say it over and over. That's like a really common theme to me is I have this, that I'm very, but it's really obvious to me that a lot of filmmakers spend so much more time hyper-focused on, they have to really understand what's about to happen when they take this, build this next shot, because the budget's, there's so much more at risk. You're dealing with, moving environments and changing situations, and potentially actors that are being paid a lot, and a crew that is unionized, and you're burning money constantly. So you need to get it right. And to do that, you can't do the same guesswork that we often do. Like, I don't use a light meter. You couldn't get away with that.
Yeah. Well, we do use them. We just don't,
Right. Yeah. Not in the same way.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But, that's just, I don't know. I just want to like explain why I'll end up bringing up cinematographers all the time.
And why you prefer them as people.
Yeah. Maybe it's just their personalities.
Well, there's a lot to be said about actually knowing and understanding what you're.
My cars.
I don't know where we left off, so let's just pick up somewhere else.
Sounds great.
There's going to be a very disruptive cut there. If only we could put a commercial in the middle.
Yeah, right. I have a question for you though. Like, if you were going to, all right, so why use zoom lenses at all, right?
Yeah, I've started thinking more and more about having. We actually have been building out a full zoom kit now. There was one point that I think it was when I was shooting more video, I started convincing myself I needed a complete prime kit, because that's what you do. And a lot of them just didn't see as much use, like the 24 or the 135. So what we end up using most, a lot of the thing that I shoot most often is that my wife has a style blog, so we're shooting outfit photos. And that is, it's like it's like dynamic portraits. So we're usually on location and we're moving around, and we want to get a bunch of variety in about half an hour. And that's always the 70 to 200.
Yeah.
Unless weight is a problem. So if we're traveling, sometimes we will just have the 85. And the 85 I find to be really flattering for like, you can get a nice full body shot with it if you back up enough. It wouldn't be great for street photography, full body, but for somebody that you're working directly with, you know, you can get them about that distance.
Yeah.
So in the 7200 is what sees the most use for me right now. Then we also shoot weddings. In those cases, usually one of us has a zoom and one of us has a prime. Ideally, I like shooting with multiple bodies at once. I'd love to have like a 85 and a 35, or like a 50 and a something else. I don't know. But like being able to just, you know, but yeah, so like a 50 millimeter to get the shallow depth of field, or the, I don't know, yeah, just basically for the blur a lot of the time. And then the other person shooting with a zoom, because you need the range at an event. If you can't control the situation at all, it's really hard to get everything that you need if you only have a prime lens.
Yeah, and then you're constantly jockeying between things, and you're missing moments because of that.
Yeah, you sacrificed something.
So in an interesting way, you answered my question, which was why would you want to have a zoom? And that, you know, like, I think that, you know, it goes back to the earlier point when we were talking about like people's idea of what they're going to capture, and they want to have like this huge range of opportunity. Right. But in the real world, making great photographs, you know, that huge range of opportunity is more limiting, in my opinion, because you're not really looking for, you know, a composition within the range that you have. You're kind of looking for whatever's available throughout this huge range.
What would you know, desert island, what's your desert island lens? You've got one lens and one body. You know, what do you just bring around with you all the time? What could carry you furthest in life?
Whew, that's hard. I'm gonna have to just say the 35. Yeah, like it's, you know, like I have just a love affair with my my Nikon DF and the Sigma 35-1.4 art lens. Those two together have been quite amazing for me, because I find that, you know, I can get close with that lens, and it's just really versatile. I can get close. I can shoot fast.
Remind me, is the DF full frame?
The DX or the DF? Yeah, the DF is full frame. Yeah.
Okay, so so you are talking about True 35.
Yeah. And I find that to be just my most comfortable. Like I love a 50 also, but like I love 50 if I'm shooting people and I know that it's what I'm shooting. You know, it's kind of like 50 and an 85 or those are people lenses to me. I don't really think of them as being anything else.
But how often are you not shooting people? Like, are there a lot of days that you go out and plan to start shooting, but there's not going to be people in your shots? Yeah, there are. It's not as often. Most of my commercial or stock work is going to be centered around people, and then some of it is going to be food. But it's funny because neither of those things I use the 35 for. But, you know, when I'm just, you know, out and about, I feel like the 35 is the thing that's going to be the most versatile thing for me to have, and the thing I'm going to use, which is also why I love carrying around a Fuji X100S. Because that's what the equivalent is built into it, right?
Yeah, because it's you know, what's it, 23 or whatever, which makes it a 35 in the crop sensor. So
find the focus fast enough on that thing.
Yeah, that's the downside. It's a slow focus machine, but
yeah, but I love the idea of the fixed focal length, more compact camera. I think it's brilliant, and I'm surprised it actually took so long for the larger sensor fixed lens thing to actually happen. Yeah,
you got really quiet. Did you notice that?
Oh no, I didn't, because I'm not monitoring myself. How about now?
That's a little bit too loud.
How about now?
Yeah, that seems good. Okay.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I know if I'm shooting people, like I want my 50 and my 85. If I'm shooting specifically for stock, then I'll probably take my 70 to 1 or 70 to 200 and the 50. And maybe also the 35, just because it's like, yeah. And I usually end up always hating myself for having a heavy bag.
Yeah. Is that like a normal kit for you? That's those three lenses?
It was like, I actually have started to leave the 270 or the 70 to 200 at home because it's so heavy. So I'd say a normal kit for me is having a 35, 50 and an 85.
That's fair. Well, and yeah. I can see why a lot of people get attracted to the Micro Four Thirds or just more compact cameras for that purpose. I mean, shooting on a Fuji kit with those three lenses would be it'd be about the equivalent weight of the Sigma 50 and a 5D.
Yeah, it'd be sweet.
And you could put them all in one pocket.
Yeah. But, if you could get the same performance,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, if you could get the same performance with it, I don't know who wouldn't trade that.
Yeah, it'd make me less interested in zooms if I could pocket 3 prime lenses all at once. Yeah.
But I mean, going back to the bigger question, it's just like, so if you are kind of an amateur and you're wondering what, like what's the real, what's the deal between zooms and primes? It's like, to me, it's a matter of specifically what you're shooting. If you're shooting weddings, if you're shooting events, you have to have zooms. Like, and especially if you only have one body, which is crazy if you're shooting weddings. But I feel like having to constantly trade or change out your lenses while in action is it's not a good idea at all.
It's misery.
Yeah, it's awful, and you miss a lot of shots, and then you're constantly looking for excuses not to have to change your lens.
Yeah, it's true.
And then so you're making compromises that may or may not be good for what you're doing. And furthermore, like, I think that if you're going to learn how to take great photos, maybe this is going back a little bit too far into my own training, but like, when I was in school, they were saying, like, well, if you're going to have a zoom, fine, but just like stick it on 50 and leave it there.
Right. And
learn how to take a good photo at 50 and then move on. And I think that, like, why not take that to the next level and if you're just starting out and you're not even starting out, but just getting serious, like, buy a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens. They're great. They're cheap. And, you're going to learn more about photography on that lens than you're going to on a like 18 to 55 or 24 to 70 or something.
It's a must recommendation for anybody.
Yeah.
Starting out. The thing that I find people will be frustrated with after is that they're usually also getting a crop sensor camera to start with. So maybe a Rebel, and putting a 50 on that makes it closer to an 80, 80 something. And that's a little less versatile than a true 50. And I think I don't know. I've heard complaints, but
yeah. And that's valid. Like, I think if you're going to get a crop sensor, then you should get the 35.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, though, the 35, it's not as cheap in Canon. It's much more expensive for the 35 2.0.
Oh, too bad.
It's like it's over $300 instead of $150. So.
Yeah. So at Nikon, you can get the 35 1.8 DX lens, which is usually about $180.
Wait, am I right about this?
I'm not sure.
Well, you keep talking. I'll tell you.
Yeah. So in Nikon, you can get like the D5300 and the 35 DX 1.8, and you're going to spend a small amount of money. And quite honestly, like, if you have good ideas, your photos are going to be awesome with that combination.
Yeah. My internet isn't working, so I don't have an answer. Which is weird because we're on Skype, but
yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Anyway, yeah, it kind of limits what people usually want to do, that there can be that price difference. I mean, when somebody's starting out, $100 difference for a lens is a lot more intimidating than as you get further along, and you start counting the multiple hundreds when you make your decisions, if your income depends on it. So
Yeah, no, there's no question. It's a tough call, and I think it just demands, like, that's why I always ask people though, like, why do you want to buy a DSLR?
yeah, what are
what's
you after?
Yeah, what's the advantage? Because if we're gonna talk zooms, we got to talk DSLRs. Because if you're buying, like a, what's the Canon, the G13 or whatever?
Yeah, we're up to 16.
16 now.
Yeah.
The G series, like those are really great, consumer pocket cameras that do a good job of everything.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, they really do.
And
that's what we bring around when we're not going to take out an SLR. We just grab the G16.
Yeah, and it's you can put it in your pocket comfortably, and you can take it to concerts, and you can it'll give you reasonable results, and you can you have a nice range. So I mean, really, if that's what you're after, then I would just always suggest getting something like that, or maybe those Sonys, right?
Right. Well, and in those cases, also look more at the lens, the sharpness or the speed. Look at the speed more so than the range. Those travel zooms that I was talking about, getting 300 times, or I don't know how they measure them on those compact cameras, but it's not as important as if you can get 2.8 or something like that. It'd be a lot more helpful to you. And 2.8 through the whole zoom range as well. So when you're wide or zoomed in.
Yeah. Which is, I think that's an important way of like actually recognizing, what a quality lens versus a crappy zoom lens is in general, is whether or not it has a constant aperture.
Yeah, that's just a quick way to spot it. If it is not constant, then
it's a piece of crap.
Garbage. Yeah, and it's really hard to recommend anybody start with any of those. You can get a kit zoom because it's free. That's the only reason I think you should start with a kit zoom. Because Absolutely. It's just dirt cheap, but they are not very good, any of them.
No, they're really not. But I Nikon's 18 to 55 is actually like a pretty sharp lens. I mean, it's an amazing piece of machinery actually, because it's worth nothing. And
you can't resell it.
No, I mean, it's made out of plastic and glass, and the fact that it's as good as it is actually, it's pretty rad. If you're just buying something that's crappy, but so like if you're gonna buy that kit, like, okay, buy a 35 or 50 as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Because and also the things that I see the worst of in the Canons are the chromatic aberration is huge on those. It's the worst case is when you can spot that it's a cheap lens without zooming in. It's not even 100% sharpness. It's just the whole image. Either the corners are a bit soft or and there's a lot of lenses that have that look. I don't know, but I think the Canon updated their kit lens since I would have tried the last one. So I don't know, but I can't speak to the new one. But
well, also the ultra wides or the super wides. That's another problem with those ones, is that if you don't get, I have to say especially, with those ultra wides, if you don't buy the pro version, like, don't even bother.
Yeah,
because it's useless.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to like one more thing actually. Just speaking of which lenses to buy, like to kind of wrap it up, the Sigma discussion, which we've had a lot ourselves, that suddenly Sigma went from being this backwater third-party whatever lens you don't really recommend to anybody to the lens maker, the gold standard. I think the 50 1.4 and the 35 1.4 have now set the bar for SLR full frame.
It makes no sense.
Everything.
It makes no sense to me whatsoever. I have no idea how this happened. The first non-Nikon lens that I bought was I guess it was a 28 to 300. No, this is 70 to 300 Sigma. And it was like, it wasn't a constant aperture. Yeah, and this is a long time ago.
Yeah. I had a Tamron like that.
Yeah, and it was the absolute worst piece of crap and you know, when you would try to focus it, like it felt like you were like crashing a bicycle, you know, like the sounds.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
yeah,
gears crunching.
Yeah, there's nothing about that was right or normal,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my view of Sigma, and like.
And rightly so for a long time. Even their primes, even their expensive professional stuff had mixed results. There's fans. There's I know there's fanboys out there of the older Sigma stuff, but a lot of people had a lot of problems with it too. Really inconsistent focusing and.
Yeah, exactly. And now the new ones, you know, I do think that the Nikon and Canon stuff probably still has a slight edge in terms of, you know, fast focusing and, you know, just like focusing in very low light, you know, which kind of goes against the whole point of why you would want one of these Sigmas, is because they're low light.
Yeah.
I personally haven't had a lot of problems.
I don't find, for me, you have the 35 and I have the 50, right? That's the.
Yeah, I have both.
Yeah. And I don't think we've ever noticed the slowness of focusing to be a problem. With the biggest problem though, in case anybody else is running into it, is I actually found that our 50 was way off until it was calibrated to the camera. The default focus was just completely wrong, and that's not okay. And a lot of people would never try to do the micro adjustments in camera, and if I hadn't, I probably would have been a lot more frustrated with it.
Yeah, so if you get the dock, you can fix that there's software that Sigma lets you, you know, it's the same micro adjustment that you're making in the camera, but you're just doing it on the lens, which is interesting.
Idea. It's just too bad. I had imagined it would come with the lens.
Right. Well, it's cheap.
Is it? How much is it? Do you know?
It's like $59 US.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you're gonna have more than one, then I'd recommend getting it, you know?
Yeah. And I think at some point, gradually, a lot of people are going to be replacing their whole Canon kit.
Yeah. You know, this is actually, I'm really glad that we brought up Sigma, because Sigma created in their art series a lens that is, it's probably, I haven't used it because I don't have a crop sensor, but if I did have a crop sensor, I would buy it right now. Yeah. And it's the 18 to 35 constant 1.8.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
I know it was like DP Review put it as lens of the year last year. Like, it's
the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. It's really,
I mean, if
really
you're
cool.
using a crop sensor and you want to, like, you know, a normal zoom, like, I don't know why you'd think of anything else, frankly.
It's not a huge range, but the quality looks great. The 1.8 is mind-blowing. It seems like a typo.
Yeah. I mean, to be that fast, that's that's really cool. Yeah, but it is not a big range. That is for sure. But
oh no, but yeah, definitely. If we had any crop sensors, it would be on the shopping list for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I don't shoot sports, but if you do shoot sports, Sigma is also making a telephoto that it's in that same series. It's not an art lens, I don't think, but it has the same look.
Right. I don't remember the range. I've heard great things though, and
yeah, it's 150 to 600.
And what's the aperture?
Well, it's not a constant, but
this isn't the one I was looking at then.
Okay, so this one is, oh, no, hold on. Okay, so there's two, right? That one is, the 150 to 600 is, it's a floating aperture between 5 and 6.3. Okay. But then they also have a 120 to 300 that's a constant 2.8. And it's also cool. And it's also stabilized.
Yeah, that's really nice.
But
it's probably still cheaper than the Canon. Not quite.
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, as far as like if I'm comparing it to the 70 to 200 Nikon, like this one costed about $1,000 more.
Okay, that's quite a bit more.
Mm-hmm. It's so. I mean, once you get into that range, I think that they all kind of level out to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm really curious where Sigma is going to be in another few years, and especially where Canon's going to be. the pressures are really on. Well, and I suppose Nikon as well. They both need to just completely change what they're doing. Like somebody has probably stopped the presses a year ago and said, we need to fix this. But it's strange. What Canon's strategy has been is actually they're adding IS to a lot of their primes. That's their first thing they're doing. So there's going to be like 50 IS, and I think there's I'm not going to say all the numbers because I don't remember, but I know they're rolling out stabilized primes. That's before they update.
That is so curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's great for video. That's the first argument for it. Really great for video.
Doesn't it make a lot of noise though?
No. And well, I mean, it makes some noise, but if you're doing on-camera audio, then it's all right off anyway. You can hear the focusing more than the image stabilization, I find. But if you're doing a real video, the mic is somewhere else anyway.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So I have the Nikon 105 2.8 macro lens, which is the only prime lens that I have that has the stabilization.
Yeah, we don't have any, but it's interesting. I don't know. It's curious.
It's loud.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but I mean, if you're using it correctly, then that's not an issue, right?
Right.
So,
all right. Well, I think that was a lot to say about zooms and primes.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up and do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Zooms are boo in my book. Unless you're shooting weddings.
Unless you need them, and then you desperately need them, and they're the most important thing.
Yeah,
and the rest of them are terrible.
But you have to buy the best one. Sorry, there's no cheap.
Yeah, this would be a different conversation. If we're talking about just cheap stuff, it's all garbage. If we're talking about the pro stuff, there's plenty of nice options.
Yeah, that's right.
So where can people find you on the internet, Cameron?
I am most visible on Stocksy.com. So it's Stocksy.com/camrocker. You can also find me at Twitter/camrocker. And right now I'm rebuilding my website, so that's not available. Or you can also find me. Yeah, well, I just got a new logo, and I'm totally excited.
I saw it. It looked great.
Yeah, I just got 20 revisions. So the other thing is on Instagram at Cameron, which is spelled Kammerun. So great. That's where I'm at.
And you can find me Stalman on Twitter and Stalman on Instagram and Stalman.com to see the portfolio that I shoot with my wife Anya. And I got to have her on here sometime too.
You do?
Yeah. Well, let's keep doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.
Bye.